The control room buzzed with activity as technicians watched their screens with worry. Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes locked on the main display. The UES Spectre, humanity's most advanced warship, hung in space like a dark shadow against the stars. "Warp test starting in 30 seconds, Captain," said a young officer nearby. James nodded but said nothing. His brother Thomas was on that ship. As the commander of the Spectre, Thomas had insisted on leading the first real test of the experimental warp drive. Now James watched from Fleet Command's monitoring station, his stomach tight with worry. 20 seconds. The Spectre was special, not just because it carried his brother, but because it held humanity's newest secret weapon. The ship could hide in plain sight, its hull covered in materials that bent light and sensor readings around it. This stealth technology might finally give humans an edge against the Arcturus Dominion, the alien empire that had pushed mankind to the edge of defeat. 10 seconds. James leaned forward. "Thomas, are you ready?" he asked through the comm. His brother's voice came back clear. "All systems green. We're making history today, James." 5, 4, 3. James held his breath. 2, 1. On the screen, the Spectre's engines flared bright blue. The ship seemed to stretch for a moment, like a rubber band being pulled. Then a flash of light filled the display. And the Spectre was gone. "Warp successful," someone called out. Cheers started to rise around the room. James didn't join them. Something felt wrong. "Where's the exit point?" he demanded. The cheers died down as technicians checked their readings. "Sir, we don't have confirmation of re-entry." James felt cold. "What do you mean? Where's the ship?" "Unknown, sir. It's not appearing at the planned coordinates." For the next 3 hours, James watched as Fleet Command sent ships to search the area. They found nothing. No debris. No sign of the Spectre or its crew of 37 people. His brother was simply gone. 3 years later, James Walker now had an office at Fleet Command. Not because he'd been promoted, but because they didn't know what else to do with him. After the Spectre vanished, the military shut down the project. They called it a failure and buried it under security clearances so high that even James couldn't access the files anymore. His new desk job was punishment for asking too many questions about his brother's ship. James stared at his computer screen without really seeing it. 3 years of pushing papers. 3 years of nightmares about his brother floating forever in the emptiness between stars. A knock on his door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called. A young woman in a crisp uniform entered and saluted. "Lieutenant Parker, sir." "Admiral Reeves asks to see you immediately." James raised an eyebrow. Admiral Reeves was the head of fleet operations. He didn't call for desk officers without good reason. Did he say why? "No, sir, but he said it was urgent." 10 minutes later, James stood outside the Admiral's office, straightening his uniform before the secretary waved him in. Admiral Reeves was a tall man with gray hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. He didn't stand when James entered, just motioned to the chair across from his desk. "Captain Walker, thank you for coming quickly." "Of course, Admiral." Reeves studied him for a moment, then pressed a button on his desk. The windows turned dark, and a security field hummed to life around the room. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest level," Reeves said. He turned his screen so James could see it. The video was grainy and dark. It showed a battle in space, human ships fighting against the angular vessels of the Arcturus Dominion. The humans were losing, their formation breaking under heavy fire. Then something strange happened. Dominion ships began to explode one after another, struck by weapons fire that seemed to come from empty space. James leaned closer. For just a moment, as a nearby explosion lit up the darkness, a ship appeared in the video, a human ship with a familiar outline. Then it was gone, like a ghost. "What am I looking at?" James asked, his heart suddenly pounding. This footage was taken 3 weeks ago at the Battle of Proxima Colony, Reeves said. Notice anything interesting? James swallowed hard. That ship. It looked like the Spectre. Reeves nodded. That's what our analysts think too. But the Spectre was lost 3 years ago. Could it be another stealth ship? Maybe they continued the program secretly. No. All stealth projects were shut down after the Spectre disappeared. There are no other ships like it in our fleet. James stared at the frozen image. Then what is it? Reeves sighed. We don't know. But this isn't the first sighting. He brought up more videos, all showing the same thing. A battle going badly for human forces, then the mysterious ship appearing from nowhere, attacking Dominion vessels, and vanishing again. It only targets the enemy, Reeves said, never attacks our ships. In fact, he showed one final video. This is from last week. Colony on New Eden. The Dominion was about to overrun it when our ghost ship appeared and destroyed their entire attack force. James felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. It could be them. It could be the Spectre. Maybe. But that's not the strangest part. Reeves pointed to the screen again. Look at the attack pattern. The way it strikes from blind spots, then circles back. James recognized it immediately. That's Thomas's strategy. He developed it at the academy. Exactly. Reeves leaned back in his chair. Captain Walker, I need someone to find this ship. Someone who won't broadcast what they're doing. Someone who might recognize patterns that others would miss. You're giving me a ship. James couldn't hide his surprise. The UES Horizon. Small, fast frigate. Good sensors. Officially, you'll be running patrol duty along the outer colonies. And unofficially, find our ghost ship, determine if it's the Spectre. And if it is, Reeves's eyes were hard. Find out where it's been for 3 years, and why it's back now. James stood straighter. When do I leave? Tomorrow. Pick your crew carefully. You'll need people who can keep secrets. As James turned to leave, Reeves called after him. One more thing, Captain. Sir, if it is your brother out there, remember your duty to Fleet Command. James nodded stiffly and left the office, his mind racing. After 3 years of desk duty and nightmares, he finally had a mission. He was going to find the ghost ship. And if it was Thomas, if his brother had somehow survived out there all this time, James was going to bring him home. No matter what Fleet Command wanted. The UES Horizon cut through space, its engines humming with power. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak by as they traveled at high speed. It had been 2 weeks since Admiral Reeves gave him this mission, and so far, they had found nothing but cold trails. Captain, we're approaching the Theta system, said Lieutenant Mark Davis from the pilot's seat. James nodded. Slow to half speed. Lieutenant Hayes, start your scans. Anna Hayes was the best sensor specialist in the fleet. James had specifically requested her for this mission. She had a gift for finding things that didn't want to be found. Yes, sir, she said, her fingers dancing over her console. Starting deep space scans now. The Horizon had visited 2 other systems already, following reports of the ghost ship. Each time they arrived too late. All they found were the remains of Dominion ships and strange energy readings that no one could explain. The crew was getting restless. 20 officers and crew members, all handpicked by James, all told only that they were hunting for an unknown vessel. He hadn't shared his suspicions about the Spectre with anyone except his first officer, Commander Bell. Captain, Hayes called out suddenly. I'm picking up unusual quantum disturbances, similar to what we found in the other systems. James moved to her station. Show me. The screen displayed wave patterns that seemed to ripple and shift in impossible ways. It's like echoes, Hayes said, as if something passed through normal space and left ripples behind. How old? Hayes studied her readings. Fresh, less than 6 hours. James felt a spark of excitement. They were just here. Can you track the disturbance? Hayes bit her lip. Concentrating. Maybe. The pattern seems to be moving toward the mining colony on Theta IV. Set course, full speed, James ordered. Maybe this time, they would be fast enough. Meanwhile, in a place that wasn't quite normal space, the UES Spectre drifted silently. Commander Thomas Walker looked out through the ship's viewports, but what he saw wasn't stars. It was a shifting, swirling darkness streaked with ribbons of blue light. The void between dimensions, their home for the past 3 years. Status report, he said, his voice rough from tiredness. His science officer, Dr. Ben Miller, looked up from his station. Phase stabilizers holding at 40%. Weapons and engines at 75%. We can make one more jump into normal space before we need to rest the systems. Thomas nodded. The Spectre and its crew existed in a nightmare state. When their experimental warp drive malfunctioned 3 years ago, it didn't destroy them as everyone thought. Instead, it trapped them in a partial phase shift, caught between normal space and somewhere else. They could see the real universe. They could even affect it by briefly shifting closer to normal space. But they couldn't fully return, not without the ship tearing itself apart. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're picking up distress signals from the mining colony on Theta IV. Dominion ships are attacking." Thomas straightened in his chair. "How many?" "3 warships. The colony has minimal defenses." Thomas didn't hesitate. "Battle stations. Prepare for phase shift." The crew moved quickly to their positions. After 3 years, they operated like a perfect machine. They had learned to use their curse as a weapon. The Spectre could appear from nowhere, strike with deadly accuracy, and vanish before the enemy could respond. "Remember," Thomas said, "we hit fast, and we hit hard. No lingering in normal space longer than 2 minutes." The last time they stayed too long, the phase shift nearly collapsed completely. Half the ship started to materialize in normal space, while the other half remained shifted. 5 crew members died before they managed to stabilize. Phase shift in 3, 2, 1. The swirling void outside the viewports faded, replaced by the black of space dotted with stars. The colony of Theta IV appeared ahead, a cluster of lights on a small moon. 3 angular Dominion warships hung above it, firing energy weapons at the surface. "They haven't seen us yet," said the tactical officer. "Stealth systems holding. Target the lead ship's engines," Thomas ordered. "Fire when ready." The Spectre's weapons charged silently. Then beams of energy lanced out, striking the Dominion ship's propulsion system. The alien vessel lurched, its engines flaring and then dying. The other 2 ships immediately began scanning for the attacker. "Moving to position Alpha," said the pilot, guiding the Spectre to a new firing position. Thomas watched the timer on his console. 1 minute 15 seconds in normal space. Fire on target 2. More energy beams shot out, slicing through the second Dominion ship's weapons array. It spun wildly, disabled but not destroyed. "Sir," the science officer called, "I'm detecting a human ship entering the system. Fast frigate, UES classification." Thomas felt a strange jolt. "Fleet sent help. That's unusual." 30 seconds left in normal space, warned the tactical officer. "Target the 3rd ship's bridge and fire." The Spectre's weapons struck with perfect accuracy. The last Dominion ship went dark, drifting harmlessly away from the colony. 10 seconds, called the science officer. "Sir, the human ship is hailing all frequencies. They're asking for the Spectre by name." Thomas froze. "What?" "Phase shift failing," warned the tactical officer. "We need to go now." Thomas wanted to stay, to find out who knew they existed, but the ship was already shuddering around them. "Return to void," he ordered reluctantly. The stars began to fade as the phase shift pulled them back into the in-between place. The last thing Thomas saw was the human ship growing larger in their viewports, racing toward them as if desperate to make contact. Then they were gone, back to their prison of swirling darkness and blue light. On the bridge of the horizon, James Walker stared at the empty space where, for just a moment, he'd seen a familiar shape. "Did you get a clear scan?" he demanded. Lieutenant Hayes shook her head. "Not completely, sir. But what I did get." She looked up with wide eyes. "It matches the Spectre's configuration. And there's more. The quantum readings suggest the ship isn't fully in our dimension. It's partially phased out of normal space. So that's how they appear and disappear," James whispered. "They're trapped between dimensions." Hayes nodded slowly. "The crew could still be alive in there, Captain. But I don't know how we could reach them." James stared at the now empty space. "We just missed them," he said quietly. Then, with new determination, "But we're getting closer. Next time, we'll be ready." He turned to Commander Bell. "Send a message to Admiral Reeves. Tell him we've confirmed it's the Spectre, and tell him we need a quantum physicist, the best he can find." For the first time in 3 years, James felt real hope. His brother wasn't dead. He was lost, caught in some kind of dimensional trap, and James was going to find a way to bring him home. Dr. Eliza Morgan was not what James had expected. The quantum physicist was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She had arrived on the horizon by special transport just 3 days after James's report to Admiral Reeves. "So you're telling me," she said, studying the data on the screen in the ship's conference room, "that the Spectre is trapped in a partial phase shift between dimensions." "That's our best guess," James replied. "Can you help us reach them?" Dr. Morgan frowned. "Maybe. But first I need to understand exactly what happened to them." Before she could continue, the ship's alarm blared. Commander Bell's voice came over the speaker. "Captain, to the bridge. Emergency." James and Dr. Morgan rushed to the bridge. The main screen showed a message from Fleet Command. "Priority 1. The shipyards at Arcturus Base are under attack," Bell explained. "Massive Dominion fleet. They came out of nowhere." James felt cold. Arcturus Base was humanity's primary shipyard. If it fell, the war could be lost in a single day. "How far are we?" he asked. 2 hours at maximum speed. Set course immediately." As the horizon changed direction, Lieutenant Hayes looked up from her console. "Sir, Arcturus Base is where they built the Spectre." James nodded slowly. "My brother will know that too." The void around the Spectre seemed darker than usual. Thomas stared at the readings on his console with growing alarm. "Confirm this," he ordered. His tactical officer nodded grimly. "Confirmed, sir. The Dominion has launched a surprise attack on Arcturus Base. 4 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, and at least 30 smaller vessels." Thomas stood up. "How did they gather such a force without our intelligence detecting it?" "Unknown, sir, but the base defenses won't hold against those numbers." The science officer spoke up. "Sir, Arcturus Base is." "I know what it is," Thomas cut him off. "It's where we were built, and it's the heart of the fleet's shipbuilding capacity." The crew fell silent, all thinking the same thing. If Arcturus Base fell, humanity might lose the war. Thomas made his decision. "Prepare for phase shift. All power to weapons and engines." "Sir," the science officer protested, "our systems haven't fully recovered from the last shift. If we push them now—" "I know the risks, Doctor," Thomas said quietly. "But if we don't act, there might not be a humanity to return to." No one argued further. They prepared the ship, each person silently accepting what might be their final mission. Phase shift in 3, 2, 1. The battle at Arcturus Base was already lost when the horizon arrived. The massive Dominion fleet had broken through the outer defenses and was closing on the shipyards. The few remaining human ships fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. "Take us in," James ordered. "Target the nearest cruiser." "Sir," Commander Bell said quietly, "there are too many. We can't make a difference." James knew Bell was right, but he couldn't just watch. "We have to try." all weapons ready. Before the Horizon could fire, a Dominion cruiser near the center of their formation suddenly exploded. Then another, and another. "What's happening?" James demanded. Lieutenant Hayes leaned forward over her sensors. "Sir, it's them. The Spectre is here." The ghost ship was barely visible, a shimmer in space that moved with impossible speed. It fired from point-blank range, its weapons tearing through Dominion ships before they could respond. "They're drawing the enemy's fire away from the base," Commander Bell said with awe. James watched the battle unfold. He recognized his brother's tactics, striking at the heart of the enemy formation, creating confusion. But something was wrong. The Spectre's movements were becoming erratic. Occasionally, parts of the ship would flicker into full visibility before fading again. "Their phase shift is destabilizing," Dr. Morgan said, studying Hayes' sensor readings. "They're pushing their systems too hard." James made a decision. "Lieutenant Hayes, can you set up a signal on an oscillating frequency? I want to try something." "What kind of frequency, sir?" James gave her a specific pattern of numbers. Hayes looked confused but entered them into her console. "What are you doing?" Dr. Morgan asked. "When we were kids," James explained, "my brother and I made up a code to send messages to each other. If he's really on that ship, he'll recognize it." Hayes activated the signal. It pulsed outward, a simple pattern repeating over and over in the chaos of battle. On the bridge of the Spectre, alarms were blaring. The phase shift was failing, systems overloading throughout the ship. "We can't maintain this much longer," the science officer warned. 2 minutes at most before catastrophic failure. Thomas gripped his chair as the ship shuddered around him. They had destroyed 3 dreadnoughts and 7 cruisers, but it wasn't enough. The Dominion forces were still too strong. "Sir," the communications officer called out suddenly, "I'm picking up a strange signal. It's not a standard fleet pattern." "Ignore it," Thomas ordered. "Focus on." "But sir, it's..." The officer paused, listening to the signal through his headset. His eyes widened. "Sir, it's coming from that human frigate, the one that tried to contact us before. And it's in Morse code. Old Earth Morse code." Thomas froze. "What does it say?" The officer listened. "It's just repeating the same thing. 3-7-9 to 2128. Thomas felt as if all the air had left his lungs. 3-7-9 to 2128. The numbers he and James had used as children when they wanted to verify a message truly came from one another. "It's my brother," he whispered. For a moment, the hopelessness of their situation lifted. James was out there, looking for him, trying to help. "Sir, what should we do?" his tactical officer asked. Thomas straightened. "Adjust our phase harmonics to match that signal's frequency. Let them see us clearly, just for a moment." "But sir..." "Do it." The officer complied. The Spectre's phase shift altered, bringing the ship briefly into fuller alignment with normal space. On the horizon, Lieutenant Hayes gasped. "Captain, the Spectre is becoming more visible. They're responding to our signal." James stepped forward, staring at the screen. For one clear moment, he could see the Spectre in all its details. The sleek hull, the distinctive profile. And on the bridge, a figure standing tall, looking directly toward them. "Thomas," James said quietly. Then the ship flickered and faded, returning to its ghost-like state. But something had changed. The Spectre's attack pattern shifted, now working in clear coordination with the human defenders. James turned to Dr. Morgan. "Tell me you can find a way to bring them back." Dr. Morgan was already working at a console, her fingers flying over the controls. "I think I understand what happened to them now. We can't fully restore them. The damage to their dimensional state is too severe. But maybe we can talk to them." As the battle raged around them, a small hope was born. The brothers had found each other across the void between dimensions, and somehow, James would find a way to bring the ghost ship home. The battle at Arcturus Base ended in a narrow victory for humanity. With the Spectre's help, the Dominion fleet had been forced to retreat, but the cost was high: 3 defense platforms destroyed and nearly 20% of the shipyard damage. On the horizon, James met with Admiral Reeves via secure communication. The Admiral's hologram stood in the ship's conference room, his face grim. "So it's true," Reeves said after hearing James's report. "The Spectre survived, and your brother is still commanding it." "Yes, sir," James replied. "But they're trapped in some kind of dimensional shift. Dr. Morgan is working on a way to communicate with them." Reeves was silent for a moment. "Walker, there's something you should know. Intelligence reports suggest the Dominion has taken a special interest in your ghost ship. They've formed a hunter-killer group specifically to trap it." James felt cold. "Who's leading it?" "Commander Krell." The name hung in the air like a threat. Krell was infamous among human forces, a brilliant tactician known for his ruthlessness. He had destroyed more human ships than any other Dominion commander. "Give me everything you have on Krell's movements," James said, "and I need more resources for Dr. Morgan's work." Reeves nodded. "You'll have it. But Walker, be careful. There are people in Fleet Command who see the Spectre as a weapon, not as a ship with a crew to be rescued." After the call ended, James went to find Dr. Morgan. She had converted a small lab on the horizon into her workspace, filling it with equipment rushed from Fleet Command. "Any progress?" he asked. Dr. Morgan looked up from her calculations. "Yes, actually. I think I've figured out what happened to them." She pointed to a complex diagram on her screen. When their warp drive malfunctioned, it didn't just move them through space. It shifted them partially into another dimension, a parallel space that overlaps with ours. "Can we get them back?" Morgan hesitated. "Not completely, no. They've been in this state too long. The ship and its crew have become integrated with this dimensional space. Pulling them fully back would kill them." James's hope dimmed. "So they're trapped forever?" "I didn't say that," Morgan replied. "We can't bring them home. But we might be able to establish stable communication, maybe even help them control their shifts between dimensions." Before James could respond, Lieutenant Hayes's voice came over the speakers. "Captain, to the bridge, urgent." When James arrived, Hayes was bent over her console. "Sir, we're picking up a distress call from the research station on Vega Prime. They're under attack." "Dominion forces?" "Yes, sir. And the attack pattern matches Commander Krell's known tactics." James's jaw tightened. "He's trying to draw out the Spectre." "Set course for Vega Prime. Maximum speed." In the void between dimensions, the Spectre drifted while its crew made repairs. The battle at Arcturus base had pushed their systems to the breaking point. They needed time to recover. Thomas sat in his quarters, staring at an old photo of himself and James. His brother had found him. After 3 years thinking they were forgotten, help was finally coming. The intercom buzzed. "Commander," his first officer said, "we're detecting the Dominion attack at Vega Prime. Research station under heavy fire." Thomas frowned. "That's odd. Vega Prime isn't strategically valuable." "No, sir, but the station is working on phase shift technology, similar to our own drive system." Thomas understood immediately. "It's a trap. They're trying to draw us out." He thought for a moment. How many civilian personnel at the station? Over 200 researchers and support staff. Thomas closed his eyes briefly. Trap or not, they couldn't let civilians die. "Prepare for phase shift," he ordered. "But we go in carefully this time." The Horizon arrived at Vega Prime to find the research station already under heavy bombardment. 3 Dominion cruisers circled it, methodically destroying its defenses. "No sign of the Spectre yet," Hayes reported. "They'll come," James said confidently. "Target the lead cruiser and fire. Let's give them some help." The Horizon moved into attack position, its weapons blazing. But it was a small ship against 3 cruisers. The Dominion vessels quickly turned their attention to this new threat. Shields at 60%. Commander Bell called out as the ship shook from enemy fire. "Stay on them," James ordered. "The Spectre will." "Sir," Hayes interrupted. "Energy readings off our port side." "It's them." The ghost ship appeared suddenly, its weapons tearing into the nearest Dominion cruiser. The enemy vessel spun away, crippled, but something was wrong. As soon as the Spectre appeared, the remaining Dominion ships changed formation. They activated strange devices on their hulls that emitted a purple-blue field. "Captain, they're generating some kind of phase disruption field," Dr. Morgan said, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're trying to force the Spectre to fully materialize." On the main screen, James could see the Spectre becoming more and more visible as the disruptor field surrounded it. The ghost ship tried to flee, but the field followed it, preventing it from shifting away. "They're trapped," James realized. "Target those disruptor devices." The Horizon fired everything it had, but the Dominion ships were ready. They blocked the attacks while maintaining the field around the Spectre. "Sir," Hayes said urgently, "I'm detecting a transmission from the Spectre. It's weak, but put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a voice, distorted but recognizable, came through. "James, can you hear me? This is Thomas Walker of the UES Spectre." James felt his heart leap. "Thomas, we hear you. We're trying to help." "Listen carefully," Thomas's voice said through the static. "The disruptors are forcing us into normal space. We can't take much more." "But Dr. Morgan's signal, the one you sent during the battle, it showed us something." "What did it show you?" James asked. "We can communicate on that frequency. It matches our phase state somehow." There was a pause. Then, "James, you need to know what happened to us." As the Horizon continued firing at the Dominion ships, Thomas explained quickly. The experimental drive hadn't failed. It had worked too well, pushing them partially out of normal space. For 3 years, they had fought a guerrilla war against the Dominion, unable to return home, but unwilling to abandon humanity. "The crew chose to stay and fight," Thomas said. "We could have tried to return earlier, but it would have meant losing our advantage." The transmission began breaking up as the Dominion disruptor field intensified. "Thomas, hold on," James called. "Dr. Morgan has a plan. We can help stabilize your phase shifts." "Too late for that," Thomas replied, his voice fading. "But maybe not too late to win this fight. James, remember the lake at home? How we'd skip stones?" "Yes, but what?" "Sometimes you need to embrace the bounce, not fight it." The transmission cut off. On the screen, the Spectre was now fully visible, caught in the Dominion's trap. But instead of trying to escape, the ghost ship was changing. Its engines glowed with a strange blue-white light. "What are they doing?" Commander Bell asked. Dr. Morgan studied her readings. "They're not trying to resist the phase shift anymore." Her eyes widened. "They're pushing further into it." The Spectre began to shimmer, becoming transparent. The Dominion disruptors, designed to force the ship into normal space, couldn't stop it from moving in the opposite direction, deeper into the other dimension. What happened next would be debated by fleet tacticians for years to come. The ghost ship, now barely visible, passed directly through one of the Dominion cruisers. It moved through the enemy vessel as if it weren't there, and left behind what looked like glowing blue charges inside the ship's vital systems. When the Spectre emerged on the other side, the Dominion cruiser exploded from within. "My God," James whispered. "They've weaponized their condition." The battle turned quickly after that. The remaining Dominion forces, faced with an enemy that could move through their ships at will, retreated in disarray. And the Spectre, still shimmering at the edge of visibility, hung in space near the horizon. 2 brother ships reunited across the void between dimensions. 2 weeks after the battle at Vega Prime, the Horizon and the Spectre drifted side by side in deep space, far from any star system. Between them, they had created a unique communication system, allowing the brothers to talk regularly despite the dimensional barrier. "How's it feel to be famous?" James asked with a smile. Thomas's hologram flickered slightly in the Horizon's conference room. Famous. Is that what we are now? The ghost ship that saved Arcturus Base. The phantom vessel that can move through enemy ships. Yes, you're the talk of the fleet. Thomas shook his head. We just did what we had to do. During these past 2 weeks, Dr. Morgan had worked tirelessly with the Spectre's science team. They had made real progress in understanding the ship's unique state. They can't come home, Morgan explained to Admiral Reeves when he visited the Horizon. But they can control their shifts between dimensions now. They can appear in normal space for up to 1 hour before needing to return to the void. Reeves nodded slowly. And this new ability, moving through solid objects. It's dangerous, Morgan said. Each time they do it, they risk destabilizing their phase state completely. But yes, they can pass through solid matter when they push deeper into the shift. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Fleet Command has made a decision, he said finally. The Spectre and its crew are being officially recognized as a special unit. Their mission: continue what they've been doing. Hit the Dominion where they least expect it. James frowned. So you're just going to leave them trapped in that in-between place forever? It's not what any of us wanted, Reeves said quietly. But according to Dr. Morgan, it's the only way they can survive now. Later, when James told Thomas about the decision, his brother simply nodded. We knew this was coming, Thomas said. And honestly, James, we've made peace with it. This is our life now. At least we're making a difference. James wished he could reach across the void and grasp his brother's shoulder. Instead, he simply said, You're doing more than making a difference. You're changing the course of the war. Commander Krell stood before the Dominion High Command, his tall, angular form rigid with anger. The human ghost ship cannot be allowed to continue operating, he said. It has destroyed 12 of our vessels in the past month alone. None of them even had time to send a distress signal. The Supreme Commander, the highest authority in the Dominion military, leaned forward. Your disruptor technology failed, Krell. What do you propose now? Krell's yellow eyes narrowed. The humans have found a way to communicate with their ghost ship. They must have a link, a frequency they use. Find that link, and we can track them. And then what? Your reports say the ship can now move through solid matter, which is why I've developed this, Krell said, activating a hologram. It showed a massive weapon, unlike anything the Dominion had built before. The dimensional collapser. It doesn't just attack ships in normal space. It creates a field that collapses all dimensional states into one. The Supreme Commander studied the weapon. Will it work? There's only one way to find out, Krell replied. But first, we need to find their communication frequency. 1 month later, the Horizon was escorting a supply convoy when they received a strange message from Fleet Command. Emergency recall to Earth, James read from the screen. All available ships. Dominion fleet approaching solar system. Commander Bell paled. They're attacking Earth. They've never been bold enough to strike at the home system. James felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Set course immediately, and send a message to the Spectre on our secure channel. The journey to Earth took 3 days at maximum speed. When they arrived, they found the largest gathering of human ships James had ever seen. Over 200 vessels forming a defensive line between the approaching Dominion fleet and Earth. The Spectre was already there, waiting at the edge of the battle formation, a shimmer against the blackness of space. Status report, James called as the Horizon took its position. Dominion fleet approaching from the outer system, came the reply. 47 ships, including something huge at their center. Long-range scans can't identify it. James opened a channel to the Spectre. Thomas, are you seeing this? We see it, his brother replied. Something's not right, James. Why attack with only 47 ships? They must know they're outnumbered. Before James could respond, Lieutenant Hayes called out from her station. Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the large ship at the center of their formation. It's targeting our communications frequency. Dr. Morgan, who had remained aboard the Horizon to continue her research, rushed to the bridge. "They've found our link to the Spectre," she said. "They're using it to..." A blinding flash of energy erupted from the massive ship at the center of the Dominion fleet. It wasn't directed at the human battle line, but at the space where the Spectre shimmered. "Thomas," James shouted, "get out of there." But it was too late. The energy beam struck the area around the ghost ship, creating a strange distortion in space. The Spectre became fully visible, trapped in what looked like a bubble of warped reality. "What is that?" Commander Bell asked in horror. "A dimensional collapser," Dr. Morgan said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's forcing all dimensional states to merge. The Spectre can't phase shift away." On the main screen, James watched as the Dominion fleet began to advance, focusing their fire on the now vulnerable ghost ship. "All ships, protect the Spectre," James ordered. The human fleet moved forward, engaging the enemy. But Thomas had other ideas. "James," his voice came through, distorted by the dimensional field around his ship. "Listen to me. We can't escape this trap, but maybe we can use it." "What are you talking about?" "The collapser is merging all dimensional states. That goes both ways." Suddenly James understood. "You're going to push even deeper into the shift." "All the way," Thomas confirmed. "If we can't escape, we'll go through, right into the heart of their fleet." The battle raged around them as the Spectre began to glow with an intense blue light. The ship was straining against the dimensional collapser, not trying to escape it, but using it to push to an extreme state never attempted before. "It's working," Dr. Morgan said in amazement. "They're reaching a state of quantum superposition, existing in multiple places at once." On the screen, the Spectre began to multiply. Ghost images of the ship appeared throughout the Dominion fleet, each one semi-transparent but deadly. The original ship remained trapped in the collapser field, but these echoes moved freely. The Dominion fleet fell into chaos as ghost versions of the Spectre attacked from within their formation. Ships exploded one after another as the phantom vessels passed through them, leaving destruction in their wake. At the center of the enemy fleet, the dimensional collapser began to overload, unable to contain the Spectre's extreme phase shift. The massive weapon exploded in a burst of energy that consumed nearby Dominion ships. "They did it," James whispered. When the light faded and the battle ended, the remaining Dominion ships were fleeing. The human fleet had won a decisive victory, but of the Spectre there was no sign. "Thomas," James called over their communication channel. "Thomas, respond." Silence answered him. For 3 days, they searched the battlefield, looking for any trace of the ghost ship. James refused to give up, even when Fleet Command ordered the Horizon to return to Earth. Then, on the 4th day, as the Horizon made one final sweep of the area, Lieutenant Hayes straightened at her console. "Sir, I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's them." At the very edge of their sensor range, a familiar shimmer appeared. The Spectre, damaged but intact, phased partially into normal space. "Thomas," James called hopefully. Static answered him at first. Then, "James, can you hear me?" The bridge erupted in cheers. Thomas explained that the extreme phase shift had sent them far beyond the void they normally inhabited. It had taken days to find their way back to normal space. "But we found something out there," Thomas added. "There are more dimensions than we ever imagined, James. And in one of them, we discovered how to control our shifts completely." "You mean we can come home now?" "Not permanently. We still need to return to the void to rest. But we can visit. We can touch normal space again." 2 weeks later, in orbit around Earth, the crew of the Spectre stepped onto solid ground for the first time in over 3 years. They stayed for only an hour before they had to return to their ship and the void between dimensions. But it was enough. They were no longer lost. They were no longer just a ghost warship that shouldn't exist. They were heroes. They were family. And they had found their way home. The Deep Space Patrol ship Stargazer drifted silently through the darkness at the edge of human space. Commander James Walker stood at the bridge's main viewport, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced glass. 20 years of space patrol had taught him to trust his gut. And right now, his gut was screaming that something wasn't right. "Sir, sensors are picking up an anomaly at bearing 047, reported Tom Evans from his station. The young officer's fingers danced across his console, bringing up more detailed readings. "It's big, whatever it is." Walker turned from the viewport, his boots making soft sounds against the deck plating. "Define big, Lieutenant." "Bigger than anything we've got in the fleet, sir." Initial readings suggest it's nearly 4 kilometers in length. A low whistle escaped Walker's lips. The largest ships in the United Earth Defense Fleet barely reached 1 kilometer. He walked over to Evans' station, studying the preliminary scans. The object was holding position, showing no signs of movement or power emissions. "Get us closer, but maintain safe distance." "Full sensor sweep," Walker ordered. He activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the commander." "Battle stations, this is not a drill." Red warning lights bathed the corridors in their dull glow as crew members rushed to their posts. Walker watched as the Stargazer's tactical officer, Lisa Green, brought the ship's weapons online. Better safe than sorry in unexplored space. As they drew closer, the massive shape began to take form on their viewing screens. What they saw made every person on the bridge stop and stare. It was unmistakably a warship, but unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered in what appeared to be weapon ports and launch tubes. But what caught Walker's attention wasn't its size or its obvious military purpose. It was the markings on its hull. "Those are English letters," Green said, her voice barely above a whisper. Walker leaned forward, squinting at the enhanced image. There, clear as day on the ship's hull, was writing in standard Earth English. "UES PARADOX 2947. "That's impossible," Evans muttered. "That's 490 years in the future." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The year was 2457, and they were looking at a ship that claimed to be from 5 centuries ahead of them. Either this was an elaborate hoax, or they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. "Any power readings?" Walker asked, keeping his voice steady despite the growing unease in his stomach. "Minimal, sir," replied Green. "Life support seems to be functioning at a basic level, but main systems appear to be dormant. No signs of crew, no active weapons, no shields. She's just floating there." Walker made his decision. "Send a detailed report back to Fleet Command. Request immediate support. In the meantime, we're going to take a closer look." He turned to his executive officer, Mike Rogers. "Prepare a boarding team. Full hazard gear, weapons cold but ready. I'll lead the team myself." Rogers began to protest, but Walker cut him off with a raised hand. "This could be first contact, a trap, or something we can't even imagine. I need my best people on this, and I need to see it with my own eyes." An hour later, Walker led a team of 6 through the Stargazer's airlock and into space. Their magnetic boots engaged as they landed on the mysterious vessel's hull. Up close, the ship was even more impressive. The metal beneath their feet was smooth and unmarked, showing no signs of micrometeorite impacts or space debris, as if it had just left the shipyard. "Engineering, what do you make of this hull material?" Walker asked through his suit's comm. Chief Engineer Roy Thompson ran his scanner over the surface. "Sir, these readings don't make sense. The material composition, it's like nothing in our database. The molecular structure seems to be actively repairing itself. Self-healing metal. In 2457, that's still theoretical. They found an airlock, and surprisingly, it responded to their universal emergency codes." The team exchanged worried glances. How could a ship from the future recognize current emergency protocols? As the airlock cycled, Walker's mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. The interior of the ship was dark, illuminated only by their suit lights and occasional strips of emergency lighting along the floor. The corridors were wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, with ceiling heights that suggested the designers had efficiency in mind rather than comfort. "Atmosphere is breathable," Thompson reported, checking his instruments. "Temperature 18 degrees Celsius, standard pressure. Life supports functioning perfectly." Walker kept his helmet on anyway. "Stay alert. We don't know what automated systems might still be active." They made their way through the ship, following the emergency lighting that seemed to activate just ahead of them, as if the ship was guiding them somewhere. The architecture was clearly human in design, but everything felt advanced, streamlined, evolved. "Commander," called out Security Officer Jack Miller, "you need to see this." They had reached what appeared to be a command center. As they entered, lights flickered on, and holographic displays sprang to life around them. The technology was leagues beyond anything they had, but the layout was intuitive enough that Walker could recognize it as a bridge. "Can anyone read these displays?" Walker asked, studying the holographic text floating in the air. "Sir," Evans said, his voice shaking slightly. "They're in English. Look at this one. It's showing the ship's log. Last entry dated August 15, 2947. Walker approached the main console. As he did, a soft blue light emerged from the ceiling, coalescing into a human-sized hologram. The figure was clearly an artificial intelligence avatar, designed to look like a middle-aged man in a uniform they didn't recognize. "Welcome aboard the UES Paradox," the hologram said, its voice perfectly human. "I've been waiting for you, Commander Walker." The team raised their weapons instinctively, but Walker held up his hand. "At ease," he ordered, though his own heart was racing. "How do you know my name?" The hologram smiled, but there was sadness in its expression. "Because you sent me here, Commander. Or rather, you will send me here. 490 years from now, to be exact." Walker removed his helmet, needing to face this situation with his own eyes. "Explain." "This ship is humanity's last hope," the hologram said. "I am its caretaker, an artificial intelligence tasked with ensuring it arrives at the right time, to the right people. We have much to discuss, Commander, and very little time. Humanity faces an extinction-level threat, and this ship, impossible as it may seem, is here to prevent it." The hologram gestured, and the bridge came fully to life. Screens showed star maps, weapon systems, and technology that made their most advanced ships look primitive in comparison. But what caught Walker's attention was a countdown timer prominently displayed on the main screen. "What is that counting down to?" he asked, dreading the answer. "First contact," the hologram replied grimly, "with an enemy that will nearly destroy humanity, unless we change things here and now." Walker looked at his team, then back at the hologram. Everything they knew about physics, about time, about what was and wasn't possible, had just been thrown out the window. But one thing was clear: they had found something that would change humanity's future forever. "Tell me everything," Walker said, and the hologram nodded, beginning a story that would reshape human history. The hologram's blue light cast strange shadows across the bridge as Commander Walker and his team listened to its explanation. They had been aboard the Paradox for 3 hours now, and each new revelation made Walker's head spin more than the last. "The ship's main computer contains detailed records of our wars with the Swarm," the hologram explained, bringing up terrifying images of massive dark shapes moving between stars. "They're a collective intelligence that spreads through space like a virus, consuming everything in their path." Thompson raised his hand to touch one of the floating images, his fingers passing through the holographic display. "These energy readings are off the scale. Each of these things is the size of a small moon." "Correct," the hologram confirmed. "The Swarm builds their ships by consuming entire planets. In our timeline, humanity wasn't prepared. First contact occurred when they woke from their dormant state in the Carina Nebula. Earth had no warning. Walker paced the bridge, his boots making no sound on the strange metal floor. The ship seemed to absorb all unnecessary noise, making their voices sound oddly isolated. "You mentioned this ship has technology that breaks the laws of physics. Show me." The hologram nodded, and the bridge lights dimmed. New displays appeared, showing schematics of the ship's systems. The Paradox isn't just a warship. It's a testbed for humanity's most advanced technologies. The hull is made of adaptive nanomaterial that can repair itself and change properties based on threats. Our weapons use principles of quantum mechanics that won't be discovered for another 3 centuries. Lisa Green studied the weapon schematics with professional interest. These aren't just guns, are they? They're reality disruption weapons. In simple terms, yes, the hologram agreed. The swarmed ships are virtually indestructible by conventional means, so we learned to bend space itself to destroy them. But the ship's most important feature is its temporal displacement drive. The hologram brought up a new schematic, showing an engine design that made Walker's eyes hurt to look at. Parts of it seemed to exist in multiple places at once, and some components appeared to be moving backward through time. "That's impossible," Thompson whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. After all, they were standing on an impossible ship. "The temporal drive is what brought us here," the hologram continued. "But using it took most of our power reserves. The ship is currently operating on backup systems, while the main reactor slowly recharges. That's why we needed you to find us at exactly this moment. We have 3 months until the Swarm's scout ship launches. 3 months to prepare humanity for what's coming." Walker turned to Evans. "Get a secure channel to Fleet Command. They need to see this." But before Evans could move, warning lights flashed across the bridge. The hologram's expression changed to one of concern. "We have company. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL travel nearby. Their signatures match known pirate vessels in your time period." Walker's training kicked in. "My ship is out there alone. We need tow." "Commander," the hologram interrupted, "this might be an opportunity. The Paradox's defensive systems are still operational. Perhaps a demonstration would help convince your superiors about the validity of our claims." The bridge's main viewport cleared, showing the space around them. 3 rusty-looking ships were approaching the Stargazer, which looked tiny next to the massive Paradox. Walker could see his crew positioning for a fight, but they were outgunned 3-1. "What are you suggesting?" Walker asked the hologram. "The Paradox has non-lethal options. We can disable the pirates without destroying their ships. It would demonstrate our capabilities while saving your crew." Walker nodded. "Do it." The hologram smiled, and the bridge came fully alive for the first time. Lights blazed, systems hummed to life, and Walker felt a subtle vibration through the deck. On the viewport, he watched as invisible waves of energy pulsed out from the Paradox. When they touched the pirate ships, all 3 vessels suddenly went dark, drifting helplessly in space. "Their systems will reboot in approximately 1 hour," the hologram explained. "No permanent damage, but they won't be a threat." Walker's comm crackled. "Commander," Roger's voice came through, excited and confused. "Sir, did you see that? What just happened?" "I saw it. Mike, send boarding teams to secure those ships. I'll explain everything soon." Walker turned back to the hologram. "That was impressive, but if the swarm is as powerful as you say, we'll need more than fancy shutdown pulses to stop them." "Of course. That was just the ship's point defense system. Would you like to see our main weapons?" Before Walker could answer, Evans called out from a console he'd been studying. "Commander, I've found something in the ship's logs. It's you, sir." The hologram's expression turned grave as Evans activated a recorded message. A much older version of Walker appeared on the screen. His hair was white, his face bore new scars, but his eyes held the same determination. "If you are seeing this, then the Paradox made it," the older Walker said. "I know how crazy this all seems. I remember standing where you are now, trying to make sense of it all. But everything the ship's AI tells you is true. The swarm is coming, and we have one chance to stop them before they destroy everything we love. The recording continued, showing footage of massive battles, of Earth's cities in flames, of humanity fighting a desperate war against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The older walker explained how they'd found the swarm's weakness too late, how the temporal drive was their last desperate gamble. "Don't make the same mistakes we did," the recording concluded. "Don't wait. Don't debate. Act now, while they're still sleeping. The ship knows what to do. Trust it. Trust yourself. Good luck." The bridge was silent after the recording ended. Walker's team looked at him, waiting for his reaction. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 2 timelines resting on his decisions. "Show me everything," he said to the hologram. "Every weapon, every system, every piece of technology we have. If we're going to convince Fleet Command to launch a preemptive strike against an enemy they've never seen, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." The hologram nodded, and new displays appeared around them. As Walker and his team began to learn the secrets of humanity's most advanced warship, alarms were already going off in Fleet Command. The Paradox's arrival had changed everything, and there was no going back. In the darkness of space, the massive ship hung silently, its hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside, the future of humanity was taking shape, guided by a commander who was both learning and teaching himself how to fight a war that hadn't happened yet. The countdown to the swarm's awakening continued, marking the time humanity had left to prepare for the greatest fight in its history. Fleet Admiral Marcus stood at the head of the emergency council table, his face grim as he studied the holographic projections showing the paradox. 2 weeks had passed since Walker's discovery, and Earth's military leadership had gathered in the underground command center beneath New Geneva to decide humanity's next move. "Let me be clear about what you're suggesting, Commander Walker," the Admiral said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "You want us to launch a preemptive strike against an alien species we've never met, based on information from a ship that claims to be from the future." Walker stood straight, meeting the Admiral's gaze. "The evidence is irrefutable, sir. The Paradox's technology alone proves its origin. Dr. Torres, please explain your findings." Dr. Maria Torres stepped forward, her dark hair streaked with gray. As Earth's leading physicist, her opinion carried weight. "The ship's temporal drive isn't theoretical. It works. We've confirmed it by studying the temporal wake still surrounding the vessel. This ship truly is from our future." The room erupted in murmurs. Admiral Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Even if we accept this, and that's a big if, you're talking about starting a war." "With respect, sir," Walker replied, "we're talking about preventing our extinction." The hologram from the Paradox, which they'd taken to calling guide, appeared in the center of the room. Earth's leaders had grown somewhat used to its presence over the past 2 weeks, though some still flinched at its sudden appearances. "Perhaps a more detailed demonstration is in order," Guide suggested. "The Paradox's memory banks contain full recordings of the first swarm attack. Would you like to see how the war began in our timeline?" Admiral Marcus nodded slowly. The room darkened, and suddenly they were surrounded by a 3-dimensional recreation of Earth space. They watched as massive shapes emerged from FTL travel. Dark, organic-looking ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The recreation showed Earth's defense fleet engaging the swarm. Humanity's best weapons barely scratched the alien vessels. Then they watched in horror as the swarm ships released countless smaller creatures that tore through Earth's defenses like paper. "Stop," Marcus commanded, his face pale. The projection froze on an image of Sydney in flames. "Those creatures, they're biological weapons. The swarm is a collective," Guide explained. "Each drone is part of the whole. They don't communicate. They simply are. Their ships are grown, not built, using the resources they harvest from conquered worlds. In our timeline, humanity lost 2 billion lives in the first day of fighting. Walker stepped forward again. But now we have a chance to strike first, while they're dormant. The Paradox has mapped their location. Their main fleet sleeps in the Carina Nebula, waiting for the scout ship to wake them. We have 2 months before that happens. And what if we fail? Asked General Rivers, her weathered face showing deep concern. If we attack and don't completely destroy them, we'll start the very war we're trying to prevent. That's why we need to commit everything, Walker argued. The Paradox can upgrade our current fleet with its technology. Not to full future specs, but enough to give us a fighting chance. We've already begun modifying the Stargazer as a test case. The hologram brought up new images, showing the Stargazer's transformation. Its weapons now glowed with the same strange energy as the Paradox's systems. The ship's hull had been enhanced with the same self-repairing metal. The modifications are holding stable, Dr. Torres added. We can upgrade our entire defense fleet within 6 weeks if we start now. Admiral Marcus walked around the table, studying the frozen image of the swarm ships. The political fallout from this will be enormous. Starting a war based on future intelligence, some will call it madness. Better than the alternative, Walker said quietly. He nodded to Guide, who played one final recording. The older Walker appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a group of children in worn clothing, their faces dirty but determined. These are the last human children, the recording said, born in underground bunkers, never seeing the sun. They're the reason we built the Paradox, the reason we broke the laws of physics and time itself, because humanity deserves better than extinction. These kids deserve a future. The recording ended, leaving the room in heavy silence. Admiral Marcus looked around at the gathered leaders, reading their expressions. Some showed fear, others determination. All understood the weight of the decision before them. If we do this, Marcus said slowly, we do it right. I want every scrap of tactical data from that ship analyzed. Every weakness the swarm has, every strategy that worked against them. We're not just copying your future tech, we're going to improve on it. Walker felt hope rising in his chest. The Paradox's AI can interface with our tactical systems. It can run simulations, help us plan the perfect first strike. Sir, General Rivers interrupted. What about the public? How do we explain this? Marcus smiled grimly. We don't. Not yet. This stays classified at the highest level. As far as the world knows, we're conducting routine fleet exercises. If we succeed, they'll never need to know how close we came to extinction. If we fail, he let the thought hang unfinished. There's something else you should know, Guide said, its holographic form shifting slightly. The Paradox isn't just a warship, it's a seed ship. Explain, Marcus demanded. In its data banks, this ship carries the sum total of human scientific advancement up to the year 2947. Medical cures, clean energy solutions, faster than light travel. Everything humanity achieved before the swarm arrived. It was meant as a backup, in case the worst happened. A way to give humanity a head start rebuilding. The implications hit everyone in the room. Even if they prevented the war, this ship would advance human technology by centuries. The future was literally in their hands. Commander Walker, Marcus said, his decision made. You have operational command of this mission. Work with Guide to begin fleet modifications immediately. I want detailed attack plans on my desk in 48 hours. Yes, sir, Walker replied, saluting. As the meeting broke up, Walker felt the weight of 2 timelines on his shoulders. In one, humanity had faced the swarm unprepared and nearly died. In another, the one he was building, they would be ready. The war that shouldn't exist was about to begin. And this time, humanity would strike first. On the main screen, the countdown continued its relentless march. 2 months until the scout ship would wake. 2 months to prepare humanity for the greatest battle in its history. 2 months to change the future. The massive shipyards orbiting Mars buzzed with activity as workers swarmed over Earth's defense fleet. Red warning lights flashed constantly as engineers installed the Paradox's technology on ship after ship. With just 3 weeks left until the swarm scout's awakening, every second counted. Walker stood in the Paradox's command center, watching the progress through the main viewport. The ship had become humanity's most advanced teaching tool, its AI working around the clock to train crews in operating the new weapons and defense systems. Status report, he called out to his team. 70% of the fleet has been upgraded, Thompson replied from his station. The chief engineer looked tired but satisfied. The newer ships are accepting the modifications better than expected. The self-repairing hull technology is spreading faster than we projected. Dr. Torres looked up from her console, where complex equations floated in the air. The quantum weaponry is stable across all platforms. We've even managed to improve the efficiency by 13% over the original designs. Walker nodded, allowing himself to feel a moment of pride. In just 6 weeks, humanity had advanced its technology by centuries. But would it be enough? Guide, he called out, and the AI's hologram appeared beside him. Show me the latest simulation results. The air filled with a tactical display showing their planned attack on the swarm's dormant fleet. Hundreds of upgraded Earth ships, led by the Paradox, would emerge from FTL travel directly above the sleeping alien armada. Their first strike would use the Paradox's most powerful weapon, a quantum cascade that would tear apart the fabric of space itself. Success probability has increased to 67%, Guide reported. If we can destroy 40% of their ships in the initial strike, the remaining swarm vessels will be too disorganized to mount an effective defense. And the scout ship? Walker asked. Our advance team is in position, Guide confirmed. A new display showed 5 ships hiding in the debris field near the scout's location. They're ready to prevent its awakening if anything goes wrong with our main assault. Walker's comm unit chimed. Commander, Admiral Marcus's voice came through. We need you in the war room. There's a situation. 15 minutes later, Walker stood before the Admiral and Earth's other military leaders. The atmosphere in the room was tense. We have a leak, Marcus announced without preamble. Someone talked. The public knows about the Paradox. Walker's heart sank. They'd managed to keep the operation secret for weeks, explaining away the fleet modifications as routine upgrades. But now, how bad is it? He asked. General Rivers activated a display showing news feeds from around the world. Headlines screamed about time travel, future wars, and alien invasions. Protests had already begun outside military bases. Half the population thinks we're lying, Rivers said. The other half thinks we're about to start an unjustified war. We have peace groups demanding we attempt communication with the swarm first. That would be suicide, Walker argued. The recordings from my future self prove the swarm doesn't communicate. They consume. That's all they do. We know that, Marcus said heavily. But the public doesn't have access to those records. All they see is us preparing for a massive attack on an unknown species that hasn't done anything to us yet. Then show them, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Guide's hologram appearing in the center of the room. Show them everything. Walker understood immediately. The full recordings, not just the tactical data, but the human cost. The refugee camps, the last cities, the children. Marcus shook his head. The panic will be nothing compared to what happens if we don't act. Walker interrupted. Guide, can you broadcast to every screen on Earth? Yes, the AI replied. The Paradox's quantum communications can override any receiving device. We can reach everyone simultaneously. Marcus stood silent for a long moment, weighing the options. Finally, he nodded. Do it. Show them why we have no choice. What followed was 2 hours of unfiltered truth. On every screen on Earth, every phone, television, and computer, people watched the future that had been. They saw the swarm's arrival, the destruction of cities, the death of billions. They saw humanity's desperate last stand, the years of fighting, the final plan to send the paradox back in time. But most importantly, they saw the hope. The upgraded fleet, the new weapons, the chance to prevent it all from happening. When the broadcast ended, the protests outside military bases had transformed into recruitment lines. Public opinion has shifted. Rivers reported, reading the incoming data, 93% support for military action. We're getting volunteers from every nation on Earth. Walker turned to Marcus. Sir, we need to accelerate the timeline. Now that our preparations are public, we have to assume the swarm might have some way of detecting our activities. We can't risk them waking early. Agreed, Marcus said. How soon can the fleet be ready? Walker consulted with guides silently through his neural link. Another piece of future tech they'd adapted. 4 days to complete the essential upgrades. We'll have to finish the rest en route. Make it 3, Marcus ordered. I want every ship ready for FTL jump by then. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't stop until the threat is eliminated. As the meeting broke up, Walker felt a strange sense of déjà vu. How many times had his future self stood in similar rooms, making similar plans? But this time was different. This time, they weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting to prevent the war entirely. Back aboard the Paradox, Walker walked the now familiar corridors to the ship's heart, a massive chamber housing the temporal drive. The device pulsed with impossible energy, parts of it existing in multiple times at once. This was humanity's greatest achievement, born from their darkest hour. 3 days, he said to Guide's hologram, which had followed him. Can we do it? We already did, Guide replied with a slight smile. In another timeline, one that will now never exist. But the question isn't whether we can do it, it's what will become afterward. This ship carries more than weapons, Commander. It carries a future where humanity reaches for the stars not in fear, but in hope. Walker placed his hand on the temporal drive's housing, feeling the subtle vibrations of power flowing through it. Then let's make sure we live to see that future. Above Mars, the upgraded fleet assembled in formation. Ship after ship took position, their new weapons glowing with quantum energy, their hulls rippling with self-repairing nanomaterials. At their center, the Paradox hung like a sword of Damocles, an impossible ship preparing to prevent an impossible war. The countdown to humanity's first preemptive strike continued its relentless march. 3 days until they would change the future. 3 days until they would wake the sleeping giants. 3 days until they would learn if one temporal paradox could prevent the extinction of the human race. The vast emptiness of the Carina Nebula lit up with the sudden arrival of humanity's fleet. Nearly 300 ships dropped out of FTL travel simultaneously, their upgraded hulls gleaming with quantum energy. At their center, the paradox emerged like an avenging angel, its massive form dwarfing even the largest Earth vessels. Walker stood on the paradox's bridge, his hands gripping the tactical console as he surveyed the scene before them. In the nebula's swirling gases, dark shapes floated motionless. The dormant swarm fleet, each bioship was the size of a small moon, their black surfaces absorbing both light and sensor scans. All ships report ready, Evans announced from his station. Quantum weapons charge. Shield harmonics synchronized. Scout ship status, Walker asked, his voice steady despite the tension. Strike team confirms the scout remains dormant, Guide's hologram reported. They're in position to prevent its awakening. Walker took a deep breath. Everything they'd prepared for came down to this moment. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Commander Walker. You know why we're here. In another timeline, these creatures destroyed our world. Today, we make sure that future never happens. Stand ready. He nodded to Guide. The AI's hologram expanded, interfacing directly with the Paradox's systems. The massive ship's quantum core began to pulse with increasing power. Primary weapon charging, Guide announced. Quantum cascade will reach critical mass in 30 seconds. On the tactical display, Walker watched as the fleet moved into attack formation. They'd drilled this hundreds of times in simulations. The Paradox would fire first, its quantum cascade creating a space-time rupture that would tear apart a portion of the swarm fleet. Then, while the survivors were still recovering, the Earth ships would strike from multiple vectors with their upgraded weapons. 20 seconds, Guide counted down. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. Movement, Evans shouted. The swarm, they're waking up. Walker's blood ran cold as he watched the massive alien ships beginning to stir. Their black surfaces rippled like liquid metal as dormant systems came online. How? Walker demanded. The scout ship is still sleeping. Unknown, Guide replied, its hologram flickering with rapid calculations. Possibility. They detected our quantum energy signatures. The future tech may have triggered a defense mechanism. Time to full cascade, Walker asked urgently. 15 seconds, but the swarm ships will be combat ready in 10. Walker made his decision instantly. All ships, break formation. Initiate attack pattern Delta. Don't let them coordinate. The Earth fleet scattered just as the first swarm ship opened fire. A beam of dark energy sliced through space where their formation had been seconds before. More swarm vessels were awakening, their organic forms writhing as they prepared for battle. Cascade in 5 seconds, Guide announced. Walker watched as the nearest swarm ships began launching smaller forms, the dreaded drones that had devastated Earth in the original timeline. All ships, activate point defense grids. Don't let those drones reach you. Space lit up with weapons fire. The upgraded Earth ships proved their worth as quantum beams, and energy pulses destroyed wave after wave of drones. But more swarm ships were waking every second. Cascade ready, Guide called out. Fire, Walker ordered. The Paradox's main weapon activated, and reality itself seemed to scream. A tear in spacetime erupted in the heart of the swarm fleet, the quantum cascade ripping apart everything it touched. 3 of the massive bioships were caught in the effect, their forms twisting and fragmenting as space itself shredded them to atoms. But the remaining swarm vessels reacted with terrifying speed. They began to merge, their liquid metal forms flowing together into fewer but larger ships. They're adapting. Dr. Torres called out from her station. The quantum cascade changed their molecular structure. They're becoming resistant. Walker had feared something like this. The swarm's ability to evolve mid-battle had been documented in the future records. But they'd prepared for this too. Guide, initiate Protocol Omega. The AI's hologram smiled grimly. Protocol Omega activated. All ships, synchronize quantum frequencies to the following pattern. As the command went out, every Earth ship's weapons changed tone. The quantum energy they emitted shifted to match the Paradox's unique temporal signature. When they fired again, their beams carried fragments of future time itself. The effect was devastating. Where the combined swarm ships had been shrugging off normal quantum attacks, these temporal-infused beams cut through them like fire through ice. Their adaptive abilities couldn't cope with weapons that existed partially outside of normal time. It's working, Evans shouted. Swarm ships showing signs of molecular breakdown. But the aliens weren't finished. The remaining ships suddenly pulled back, gathering into a tight formation. Their surfaces began to pulse with dark energy. Energy spike, Torres warned. They're trying to open a dimensional rift, probably calling for reinforcements. Not today, Walker said quietly. He opened a channel to the strike team near the scout ship. Execute Plan B now. Near the sleeping scout, 5 Earth ships activated special devices provided by the Paradox. Together, they created a temporal lock, a bubble of frozen time that trapped the scout ship in perfect stasis. It would never wake, never send its signal to the rest of the swarm species. Back in the main battle, Walker watched as the remaining swarm ships struggled to open their rift. But without the scout's signal, their efforts were uncoordinated, weakened. All ships, Walker commanded, "Full attack. Everything you have. Don't let them recover." The entire Earth fleet opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of temporal quantum beams struck the swarm formation from all directions. Unable to adapt quickly enough, unable to call for help, the massive bioships began to break apart. "Guide," Walker said, "charge the cascade one more time. Let's finish this." The Paradox's weapon powered up again, drawing on its reserves of future energy. The quantum cascade fired into the heart of the dying swarm fleet, and this time there was no escape. The fabric of space-time ripped open one final time, consuming the remaining alien ships in a maelstrom of temporal energy. When the light faded, the nebula was empty except for the Earth fleet. Debris from the swarm ships dissolved into nothingness, their impossible biology unable to survive without the collective consciousness controlling it. Walker slumped in his command chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Casualties. 12 ships lost, Evans reported, his voice thick with emotion. But their crews managed to eject. Rescue operations are underway. The scout ship remains in temporal stasis, Guide confirmed. It will never wake. The signal will never be sent. The future we came from, it no longer exists. Walker looked around the bridge of the impossible warship that had changed humanity's destiny. So what happens now? To the Paradox, to you. Guide's hologram smiled. The timeline has changed. The future where we were created no longer exists, but we do exist, here and now. The Paradox carries centuries of human advancement, medical cures, clean energy, faster than light travel. Everything humanity achieved before the swarm arrived. We can give your people a better future than the one we came from. A future without the swarm, Walker said, finally allowing himself to smile. A future where those children get to see the sun. Above them, the nebula's gases swirled peacefully, showing no sign of the battle that had just prevented a war that would never happen. The Paradox hung among the Earth fleet, a warship that shouldn't exist, but did, and in existing, had changed everything. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged victorious. And now, with the knowledge and technology of centuries at their disposal, they could reach for the stars not in desperation, but in hope. The future was theirs to write.